The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office like thousands of tiny fists demanding entry. Thomas Whitmore stood motionless, his silhouette dark against the grey Seattle skyline, watching the storm roll in from Puget Sound. The Space Needle pierced through the low clouds in the distance, a lonely sentinel in a city that suddenly felt too vast and too empty all at once. He pressed his palm against the cold glass, feeling the vibration of each raindrop's impact travel through his bones. 4 years. 4 years since Rebecca's laugh had filled these halls. 4 years since he'd felt anything beyond the mechanical rhythm of work, meetings, contracts, and the hollow echo of his own footsteps in their Mercer Island mansion. "Mr. Whitmore," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, pulling him back from the edge of memory. "The new cleaning service is here. Should I send them up?" Thomas closed his eyes briefly, collecting himself. "Yes, Margaret, send them up." He'd fired the previous cleaning company 3 weeks ago after finding one of their staff photographing documents on his desk. Trust, he'd learned, was a luxury he could no longer afford. The new service came highly recommended by his attorney, a small, family-owned business that specialized in discretion for high-profile clients. Thomas returned to his mahogany desk, the surface meticulously organized with exactly 3 items: his laptop, a Montblanc pen, and a silver-framed photograph he kept face down. He couldn't bear to look at Rebecca's smile, but he couldn't bring himself to put it away either. The elevator chimed softly, and Thomas heard the doors slide open in the reception area. He forced himself to focus on the quarterly report glowing on his screen, though the numbers blurred together into meaningless columns. "Mr. Whitmore," a woman's voice, soft but steady, carried into his office. "I'm Elena Castellanos from Pristine Solutions. May I come in?" "Please," he replied without looking up, maintaining the wall of professional distance he'd perfected over the years. He heard 2 sets of footsteps enter the office, one confident and measured, the other lighter and hesitant. Curiosity finally pulled his gaze upward, and Thomas found himself looking at a woman in her early 30s with warm brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore the navy blue uniform of her company with quiet dignity, and beside her stood a girl of about 7 years old, also in a smaller version of the same uniform. The sight stopped him cold. The girl had enormous hazel eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, and she clutched a small backpack decorated with cartoon butterflies. Her presence in his office, in this sterile space of business and solitude, felt like a crack in the carefully constructed walls around his heart. "This is my daughter, Sophia," Elena explained, her voice carrying a slight accent that Thomas couldn't quite place. "I hope you don't mind. My regular sitter fell through today, and I couldn't leave her alone. She'll be very quiet, I promise. She has homework to do." Thomas realized he'd been staring. He cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the way this simple scene had unsettled him. "That's fine. As long as the work gets done properly." "It will be," Elena assured him with a small, professional smile. "We'll start with the conference room and work our way through. We won't disturb you." Sophia looked up at her mother and then at Thomas with those impossibly large eyes. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Something twisted in Thomas's chest, sharp and unexpected. The way she held her mother's hand, the trust and love evident in that simple connection, reminded him of dreams he'd buried alongside his wife. Dreams of children, of a family, of a home filled with something other than silence and regret. "You're welcome," he managed, his voice rougher than intended. Mother and daughter disappeared into the outer offices, and Thomas tried to return to his work. But concentration eluded him. He found himself listening to the soft sounds of their movement through the suite, the quiet swish of cleaning supplies, Elena's gentle murmurs of instruction to Sophia, and occasionally the girl's soft giggles. An hour passed, then 2. The storm outside intensified, rain now coming down in sheets that blurred the city into impressionist strokes of grey and light. Thomas stood to stretch, walking to his private coffee station, when he heard it. A sharp gasp, followed by the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. He moved quickly to the conference room, where he found Sophia standing frozen in the center of an expanding puddle of water and shattered glass. One of his crystal awards, a particularly heavy piece commemorating a major merger, lay in pieces on the marble floor. The girl's face had gone completely white, tears already streaming down her cheeks. "Sophia!" Elena rushed from the adjacent office, her expression shifting from concern to horror as she took in the scene. "Oh no! Oh no!" She dropped to her knees, immediately beginning to gather the larger pieces of glass. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitmore. I'll pay for it, I promise." "Sophia, baby, what happened?" "I was just trying to help clean," Sophia sobbed, her small body shaking. "I didn't mean to knock it over. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Thomas stood in the doorway, watching mother and daughter in their distress, and something long dormant stirred within him. He saw Elena's hands trembling as she picked up glass shards, saw the way she kept glancing up at him with barely concealed fear, probably calculating how much this mistake would cost her. He saw Sophia's devastation, the way she hugged herself as if trying to make herself smaller, invisible. And suddenly he was transported back 5 years to a sun-drenched afternoon in their old apartment, before the money, before the success. Rebecca had been carrying his grandmother's antique vase, the only thing of value they owned, and had tripped over his briefcase left carelessly in the hallway. The vase had exploded into 1,000 pieces, and Rebecca had burst into tears, apologizing over and over while he'd knelt beside her, laughing, telling her it was just a thing, that nothing mattered but her safety. When had he forgotten that? When had he become the kind of man who made a child cry over broken crystal? "Stop," Thomas said quietly, and both Elena and Sophia froze. He walked carefully around the glass and crouched down to their level. "Sophia, look at me." The girl raised her tear-stained face, fear evident in every line of her small features. "That award," Thomas continued gently, "was given to me 5 years ago for a business deal that made a lot of money but didn't make anyone's life better. It's been sitting on that shelf collecting dust because I didn't care enough about it to even display it properly." He reached out slowly, carefully, and wiped a tear from Sophia's cheek with his thumb. "You are worth more than 1,000 of those awards. Do you understand?" Sophia's eyes widened, confusion replacing fear. Elena had stopped gathering glass, staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "But I broke it," Sophia whispered. "You made a mistake," Thomas corrected. "And mistakes are how we learn. I've made mistakes that cost millions of dollars. This," he gestured at the broken crystal, "this doesn't even register." He looked at Elena. "Please, stop picking up the glass. I'll have building maintenance come up with proper equipment. You could cut yourself." Elena slowly stood, pulling Sophia close to her side. "Mr. Whitmore, thank you, but I still want to pay for it." "Absolutely not." Thomas rose as well, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how he could smell the faint scent of lavender from Elena's hair. "I mean it. It's worthless to me." "Nothing is worthless if it's broken," Elena said softly, and Thomas had the distinct impression she wasn't talking about the award anymore. The moment stretched between them, something unspoken and fragile taking shape in the air. Sophia looked between the two adults, her young mind clearly trying to understand the shift in atmosphere. The storm outside chose that moment to intensify, a crack of thunder so loud that Sophia jumped and pressed closer to her mother. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging the office into the grey half-light of the storm. "The backup generators should kick in any second," Thomas said. But even as he spoke, he realized something was wrong. The building's emergency systems should have activated immediately. He pulled out his phone, the screen's glow casting harsh shadows on his face. "No signal. That's unusual." Another boom of thunder, and Sophia whimpered. Elena wrapped both arms around her daughter, protective and fierce. "It's okay, baby. It's just a storm." But this was more than just a storm. Through the windows, Thomas could see that the entire downtown Seattle grid had gone dark. What should have been a glittering cityscape was now a collection of dark shapes against a darker sky. Only emergency lights and the occasional flash of lightning provided any illumination. "We should move away from the windows," Thomas said, his protective instincts kicking in before he could question them. "My office has interior walls. It'll be safer there." He led them back through the darkened suite, using his phone's flashlight to navigate. In his office, he found emergency candles in his desk drawer, a requirement of building safety codes he'd never expected to actually use. As he lit them, warm light pushed back against the encroaching darkness, creating an intimate circle in the vast space. Sophia had stopped crying, but remained pressed against her mother's side. Elena looked around the office, taking in details she probably hadn't noticed before. The expensive furnishings, the original artwork, the face-down photograph on his desk. "I should call the building manager," Thomas said, more to break the silence than anything else. But his phone showed the same thing. No signal. "Cell towers must be affected too. How long do you think we'll be stuck here?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Thomas walked to the window, careful to stay back from the glass. The storm showed no signs of letting up. "Could be hours. These systems-wide outages usually take time to resolve, especially in weather like this." "Hours," Elena repeated, and he heard the concern in her voice. She was probably thinking about the work left undone, the money she'd lose, the complications this would create. "You'll still be paid for the full shift," Thomas found himself saying, "and extra for the inconvenience." Elena's eyes met his across the candlelit space. "That's not necessary." "It is to me." Sophia tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, I'm hungry." Of course she was. It was past 6 o'clock, well into dinner time. Elena's expression tightened with worry. "I know, honey. We'll get something as soon as the power comes back." Thomas remembered the small refrigerator in his private bathroom, stocked by Margaret every Monday, with items he rarely touched. "I have food. It's not much, but there's fruit, cheese, some crackers, and juice boxes, I think." "Juice boxes?" Elena's eyebrow raised slightly. "You keep juice boxes in your office?" For the first time in 4 years, Thomas felt something close to embarrassment. "Margaret, my assistant, she keeps trying to get me to eat healthier. She has grandchildren. She treats me like I'm one of them." The ghost of a smile crossed Elena's face, and Thomas realized it transformed her features entirely. She wasn't just pretty. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with symmetry or fashion, and everything to do with warmth and life and presence. He retrieved the food, spreading it out on his desk like an impromptu picnic. Sophia's eyes lit up at the sight of the juice boxes, and she selected one with careful deliberation, holding it like a treasure. Elena opened a package of crackers, breaking them into smaller pieces for her daughter with practiced efficiency. "Thank you," Elena said quietly as Sophia munched contentedly. "You didn't have to do this." "It's just food," Thomas replied, but they both knew he was talking about more than crackers and cheese. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the city, but here, in this small circle of light, something else was happening, something Thomas had sworn would never happen again. "How long have you been running the cleaning business?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. He never made small talk, never allowed conversations to drift into the personal. Elena glanced at Sophia, who was absorbed in arranging cracker crumbs into patterns on a napkin. 3 years. I started it after—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "After Sophia's father left, I needed something flexible, something that would let me be there for her. That couldn't have been easy." "No," Elena admitted, her voice carrying the weight of those years. "But we managed. Sophia and I, we're a team. Aren't we, baby?" Sophia looked up, crumbs on her cheek, and nodded vigorously. "Mama says we can do anything together." "Your mama is right," Thomas said, and meant it. Elena studied him in the candlelight, and he felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the darkness or the storm. "Margaret told me a little about you," she said carefully. "When we were setting up the contract, she said you work too hard, that you're here every night until 9 or 10 o'clock. "Margaret talks too much," Thomas said, but without heat. "She said you used to be different, before." The word hung in the air between them. Before. Such a small word to contain so much loss, so much change, so much grief. "My wife died 4 years ago," Thomas heard himself say, the words emerging without his permission. "Car accident. She was coming to meet me for dinner. I was late leaving a meeting. If I'd been on time, if we'd driven together like we usually did." He stopped, the familiar spiral of guilt and regret threatening to pull him under. Elena's hand moved across the desk, stopping just short of touching his. "I'm sorry. That must have been unbearable. I swore I'd never let anyone close again," Thomas continued, wondering why he was telling this stranger his deepest truth. "It hurt too much, losing her. It broke something in me. So I built walls. I threw myself into work. I made sure I'd never feel that pain again." "And has it worked?" Elena asked softly. "The walls?" Thomas looked at her, really looked at her, and then at Sophia, who was watching them both with those enormous, understanding eyes that seemed far too wise for her 7 years. He thought about the 4 years of emptiness, the mansion that echoed with absence, the awards and achievements that meant nothing because there was no one to share them with. "No," he admitted, "it hasn't worked at all." Thunder rumbled, closer now, and Sophia flinched. Without thinking, Thomas stood and walked around the desk, kneeling beside her chair. "Hey, do you want to know a secret about thunder?" Sophia nodded, her eyes fixed on his face. "Thunder is just the sky's way of applauding the lightning. Every time lightning does something beautiful, the sky claps. That's all thunder is. Applause." Sophia considered this, her fear visibly diminishing. "Really? Really? So when you hear thunder, you're just hearing the sky celebrate. Nothing scary about that, right?" A small smile bloomed on Sophia's face, and Thomas felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept sealed shut for so long, he'd forgotten it existed. "That's a nice way to think about it," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion he didn't dare interpret. Thomas stood, suddenly aware of how close he'd gotten, how natural it had felt to comfort Sophia, how desperately he'd wanted to erase her fear. He moved back to his side of the desk, but the distance felt wrong now, artificial. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said after a moment of silence broken only by the storm. "What was she like, your wife?" Most people avoided asking about Rebecca, treating her memory like something fragile that might shatter if acknowledged. But Elena's question was direct, genuine, and Thomas found he wanted to answer. "Rebecca was—" He picked up the face-down frame, looking at her photograph for the first time in months. "She was light. That's the only way I can describe it. She made everything brighter just by being in the room. She laughed at my terrible jokes. She dragged me away from work to watch sunsets. She believed in people, even when they didn't deserve it." His throat tightened. "She would have loved meeting you both." Elena's eyes glistened in the candlelight. "She sounds wonderful." She was. "And I've spent 4 years being angry at the universe for taking her, angry at myself for not being there, angry at everyone who still had what I'd lost." He set the photo down, facing forward this time. "I've been so focused on what I lost that I forgot what Rebecca would have wanted for me." "What's that?" "To live, to be open, to let people in." He met Elena's gaze across the desk. "She'd be disappointed in who I've become." "You saved my daughter from being terrified tonight," Elena said firmly. "You turned broken glass into a lesson about mistakes and forgiveness. You made thunder into applause. That doesn't sound like someone who's lost their way completely. Maybe I just needed the right person to remind me of the path back." The words settled between them, weighted with meaning neither of them was quite ready to name. Sophia yawned, a huge jaw-cracking yawn that broke the tension and made them both smile. "Someone's tired," Elena said, smoothing her daughter's hair with infinite tenderness. "There's a couch in the conference room," Thomas offered. "She could rest there until the power comes back." They moved together through the darkened suite, Thomas carrying candles, Elena carrying Sophia, who was already half asleep against her mother's shoulder. In the conference room, Elena settled her daughter on the leather couch, covering her with her own sweater. Thomas watched from the doorway, struck by the intimacy of the moment, the casual grace of Elena's movements as she cared for her child. When had he last witnessed something so purely loving? When had he last felt connected to that kind of uncomplicated devotion? Elena straightened, checking once more that Sophia was comfortable before joining Thomas in the doorway. They stood close in the narrow space, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body, could hear the soft catch of her breath. "She's beautiful," Thomas whispered. "Your daughter. You should be very proud." "I am. She's everything to me. When her father left, when I thought I couldn't keep going, she's the one who gave me strength." Elena looked up at him, and in the candlelight, her eyes were dark pools of emotion. "People think being a single parent means you're broken or incomplete, but Sophia and I, we're whole. We're enough for each other." "You shouldn't have to be enough alone," Thomas said, the words escaping before he could stop them. "Neither should you." They stood there, two people who'd built walls around their hearts, two people who'd sworn never to risk pain again, and felt those walls beginning to crumble. The storm outside raged on, but inside this small circle of candlelight, something new was being born. Thomas raised his hand, slowly, giving Elena every chance to step back, to retreat to safety. But she didn't move. His fingers brushed her cheek, the touch featherlight, asking permission. Her skin was warm, soft, alive. "I haven't felt anything in 4 years," Thomas confessed, his voice barely audible. "And then you walked into my office with your daughter, and suddenly I'm feeling everything. It terrifies me." "I know," Elena breathed, "because I feel it too. And I didn't think I ever would again. Didn't think I deserved to." "Why wouldn't you deserve it?" "Because I chose wrong before. I chose someone who left us, someone who looked at Sophia and decided we weren't worth staying for." Her voice cracked. "How do I trust myself to choose right this time?" Thomas understood that fear intimately. It was the same fear that had kept him isolated, alone, convinced that loving again meant risking devastation again. But standing here with Elena, with sleeping Sophia just a few feet away, he realized something Rebecca would have wanted him to understand years ago. "Maybe we don't choose," he said softly. "Maybe sometimes life chooses for us. Maybe sometimes the universe sends us exactly what we need in the form of a broken award and a thunderstorm." Elena laughed, the sound quiet but genuine. "That's possibly the strangest romantic thought I've ever heard." "Romantic?" Thomas's heart stuttered. "Is that what this is?" "I don't know what this is," Elena admitted, "but I know that tonight, in this office with you, I feel safe. Sophia feels safe, and we haven't felt truly safe in a very long time." The words hit Thomas with unexpected force. Safe. When was the last time he'd made anyone feel safe? When was the last time he'd felt safe himself? "I don't know how to do this," he confessed. "I don't know how to open up again, how to risk again." "Then maybe we figure it out together," Elena suggested. "Slowly, carefully, no pressure, no expectations, just possibility." Possibility. Such a simple word, but it contained multitudes. It contained hope, which Thomas had abandoned so long ago he'd forgotten what it felt like. It contained future, which he'd stopped believing in. It contained the chance that life might offer second acts, that hearts could heal, that walls built from grief could be dismantled by connection. "I'd like that," Thomas said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The lights flickered once, twice, then blazed back to life with startling brightness. Both Thomas and Elena blinked, temporarily blinded, the spell of candlelight and storm broken by the harsh return of electricity. The building systems hummed back online, air conditioning resuming its quiet whisper, computers rebooting with electronic chirps. Sophia stirred on the couch, sitting up sleepily. "Mama, I'm here, baby," Elena said, moving to her daughter's side. "The power's back." Thomas blew out the candles one by one, watching thin streams of smoke curl toward the ceiling. The office looked different now, less like a fortress and more like just a room. Or maybe it was him who was different. Maybe everything had changed in the space of a few hours and a thunderstorm. "I should finish the cleaning," Elena said, slipping back into professional mode, though her eyes told a different story. "No," Thomas said firmly. "It's late. Sophia needs proper dinner and bed. We can reschedule for another day. But the contract—" "I own the company, Elena. I think I can authorize a reschedule." He smiled, and it felt strange on his face, like using muscles that had atrophied from disuse. Besides, I'd like to see you both again, if that's okay." Elena looked at him for a long moment, reading something in his face that made her own expression soften. "Thursday? Same time?" "Thursday," Thomas agreed. "And Elena, bring Sophia again, please. I know it's not conventional, but—" "Nothing about tonight was conventional," Elena finished. "Thursday it is." They gathered their things, Sophia now fully awake and chattering about the storm, about the juice boxes, about the nice man who said thunder was applause. Thomas walked them to the elevator, reluctant to let them go, to return to the silence of his office, his car, his empty mansion. "Mr. Whitmore," Sophia said as the elevator doors opened, "thank you for making the thunder not scary." "Thomas," he corrected gently. "Call me Thomas." "And you're welcome, Sophia." The elevator doors began to close, and Thomas had a moment of pure panic, a sense that if he let them leave, this fragile new beginning would vanish like morning mist. But Elena's eyes met his through the narrowing gap, and in them he saw understanding, promise, and something that looked dangerously like hope. The doors closed. Thomas stood alone in the hallway, listening to the elevator descend, and for the first time in 4 years the silence didn't feel oppressive. It felt full of potential, pregnant with tomorrow and Thursday, and all the moments yet to come. He returned to his office, seeing it with new eyes. The photograph of Rebecca smiled at him from the desk, and instead of guilt, he felt something else: permission, love. The sense that she would want this for him, would be happy he'd finally taken the first tentative step back toward life. Thomas picked up his phone, finding signal restored. He had 17 missed calls, 43 emails, 3 emergency notifications. The business world had continued spinning even during the blackout. But for once, it didn't feel urgent. It didn't feel like the only thing that mattered. He looked out the window at Seattle, the city lights blazing bright against the clearing sky. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed clean, fresh, ready to begin again. And so, Thomas realized, was he. And be certibitum, a day sato, Chunda Thursday, arrived with the kind of crystalline autumn clarity that made Seattle look like it belonged in a postcard. Thomas found himself checking his watch every 15 minutes, a nervous habit he hadn't indulged in since his early days climbing the corporate ladder. Margaret had noticed, her knowing glances accompanied by a small smile she thought she was hiding. "The new cleaning service worked out well, I take it?" she'd asked that morning, organizing files on his desk with deliberate slowness. "They're thorough," Thomas had replied, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Thorough. Margaret's smile had widened. "Is that why you've checked your appearance in the window reflection 4 times this morning?" Thomas had actually felt heat creep up his neck. "I have an important video conference later." "Of course you do," Margaret had said, her tone conveying exactly how little she believed him. "And I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that Elena called to confirm today's appointment. And you smiled at your phone for a full 30 seconds afterward." There was no hiding anything from Margaret. She'd been with him since before Rebecca, had watched him build his empire, had held him together when that empire felt meaningless after the funeral. If anyone had earned the right to gentle teasing, it was her. Now, at 5:45 in the evening, Thomas stood at his window watching the elevator display in the lobby far below. He'd angled his position so he could see the entrance, could watch for Elena and Sophia's arrival without being obvious about it. At least he hoped it wasn't obvious. His phone buzzed with a text from Margaret, who'd left at her usual 5:30. "Stop lurking by the window. You'll seem desperate." "Sit at your desk and pretend to work." Thomas smiled despite himself and moved to his desk, opening his laptop. But the quarterly projections might as well have been written in ancient Greek for all the sense they made. His mind kept replaying moments from Monday night. Sophia's tears over the broken award, Elena's hand almost touching his across the desk, the way her voice had softened when she'd said, "Possibility." 3 days. It had only been 3 days, yet Thomas felt like a different person. He'd actually left work at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, going home to the Mercer Island mansion and walking through it with new eyes. The place was immaculate, professionally decorated, and absolutely soulless. Every room was a shrine to grief, filled with Rebecca's things exactly as she'd left them, as if Thomas could freeze time by refusing to change anything. On Wednesday, he'd done something he hadn't done in 4 years. He'd called Rebecca's sister, Emma. "Thomas?" Emma's voice had been shocked, concerned. "Is everything okay?" "I think it might be," he'd said, the words feeling strange and wonderful on his tongue. "I think I might be ready to start living again." The silence on the other end had stretched so long, he'd thought the call had dropped. Then Emma had started crying, soft sobs of relief and joy. "Thank God. Oh, Thomas, thank God. Rebecca would be so happy. We've all been so worried about you." They'd talked for 2 hours, the longest conversation Thomas had had with anyone outside of business meetings in years. Emma had told him about her kids, about her husband's new job, about the family dinners Thomas had stopped attending. She'd invited him to Thanksgiving, just 2 weeks away, and Thomas had surprised them both by accepting. "Bring someone if you want," Emma had said carefully. "If there's anyone special." "There might be," Thomas had admitted. "It's new, it's fragile, but there might be." Now, as 6 o'clock approached, Thomas wondered if he'd imagined the connection on Monday night. Maybe it had just been the storm, the unusual circumstances, the forced intimacy of darkness and candlelight. Maybe Elena had spent the past 3 days regretting every vulnerable word, every soft glance. The elevator chimed in the outer office. Thomas's heart lurched in his chest like a teenager on a first date. He forced himself to remain seated, eyes on his laptop screen, the picture of a busy executive too absorbed in work to notice the cleaning crew's arrival. "Mr. Whitmore?" Eleanor's voice carried through the open door, professional and measured. "Please, come in," Thomas replied, still not looking up, giving himself one more moment to steady his breathing. 2 sets of footsteps entered his office. Thomas finally raised his gaze and felt the air leave his lungs in a rush. Elena wore the same navy uniform, her hair again pulled back practically, but something had changed. She looked lighter somehow, less burdened. Her eyes found his immediately, and in them he saw the answer to his unspoken question. She hadn't forgotten. She hadn't imagined it. The connection was real. Sophia bounced on her toes beside her mother, clutching a piece of paper folded carefully in her small hands. "Hi, Thomas," she said brightly, then looked up at Elena with slight worry. "Was I supposed to call him Mr. Whitmore?" "Thomas is fine," he assured her, standing and coming around his desk. He found himself smiling genuinely, freely, the expression feeling more natural than it had in years. "How are you, Sophia?" "Good. I made you something." She thrust the paper toward him with the earnest intensity only children could muster. "To say thank you for being nice when I broke your trophy." Thomas unfolded the paper carefully, revealing a crayon drawing that made his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Sophia had drawn 3 figures, a tall man in what appeared to be a suit, a woman with dark hair, and a small girl between them, all holding hands. Above them, she'd drawn a sun with an enormous smile, and lightning bolts that somehow looked cheerful rather than threatening. At the top, in careful letters that had clearly taken great effort, she'd written, "Thunder is applause." "Sophia, this is—" Thomas had to pause, collecting himself. "This is beautiful. This is the best gift anyone's given me in a very long time." Sophia beamed, her whole face lighting up. "Mama said you probably didn't have any kids' drawings on your walls, and that every office should have at least one." Thomas looked at Elena, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have said something like that." She was absolutely right. Thomas moved to his desk, opening a drawer and pulling out tape. With deliberate care, he affixed Sophia's drawing to the wall directly beside his desk, in a spot where he'd see it every time he looked up from his computer. The bright colors and childish joy looked wildly out of place among the serious artwork and corporate awards, and Thomas loved it. "There, now my office is complete." Sophia's smile could have powered the entire building. "Really? You're keeping it there?" "I'm keeping it there forever," Thomas promised, and meant it. Elena's eyes had gone bright with unshed tears. She blinked them back quickly, but not before Thomas saw. The moment felt significant, weighted with meaning beyond a simple drawing on a wall. "So," Elena said, her voice slightly husky, We should get started on the actual cleaning. That is why we're here, after all. Actually, Thomas said, the words coming out before he'd fully thought them through. I have a proposition, a business proposition, he added quickly, seeing Elena's eyebrow raise. I'd like to hire Pristine Solutions as my exclusive cleaning company, for the office here, but also for my home on Mercer Island. Elena went very still. Thomas, that's generous, but it's not charity, Thomas interrupted gently. It's business, good business. I trust you. I trust your work. And frankly, I could use someone with integrity looking after my home. It's been neglected. The current service does the basics, but there's no care in it, no attention to detail. He paused. I'd pay triple your normal rate for the exclusivity. Triple? Elena's voice came out slightly strangled. Thomas, that's insane. That's too much. It's exactly what it's worth to me. What you're worth. He held her gaze. Say yes, Elena. Sophia tugged on her mother's uniform. Mama, what's exclusive mean? Exclusive means we'd only clean for Thomas, sweetie. No other clients. Oh, Sophia considered this seriously. Would that be good? It would be very good, Elena said slowly, her eyes never leaving Thomas's face. It would mean stability, security. No more scrambling for clients or worrying about next month's rent. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. It would change everything. Then let it change everything, Thomas said softly. The air between them felt charged, electric, full of unspoken understanding. This wasn't really about cleaning services and business contracts. This was about trust, about building something, about allowing someone past the walls. I'll need to think about it, Elena finally said, though her tone suggested she'd already decided. It's a big commitment. I'd need to notify my current clients, transition them to other services. Take the time you need. But Elena, Thomas waited until she looked at him fully. I hope you say yes. I hope I do too, she admitted. Sophia, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around her, had wandered over to Thomas's window. Wow, you can see everything from up here. Look, Mama, I can see the Space Needle. Elena moved to join her daughter, and Thomas followed, the three of them standing before the vast expanse of glass and city lights beginning to twinkle in the deepening dusk. Seattle spread before them like a living map, the sound dark and vast, beyond the urban glow. It's beautiful, Elena breathed. You must never get tired of this view. I stopped seeing it years ago, Thomas admitted. It became just background. But lately, he glanced at her profile, the way the fading light painted her features in shades of amber and shadow. Lately, I'm noticing things again, beautiful things I'd stopped paying attention to. Elena turned her head, meeting his eyes, and Thomas saw his own emotions reflected back at him. Wonder, hope, terror, exhilaration, the dizzying sensation of standing on a precipice, knowing that stepping forward meant risking the fall, but finding himself willing to take that risk anyway. Mama, I'm hungry, Sophia announced, breaking the moment with perfect childhood timing. Can we get pizza after you clean? Elena's expression shifted to worry. Baby, I need to finish the work first, and then it'll be late, and pizza is expensive. I know a place, Thomas interrupted. Best pizza in Seattle. They deliver. We could order now, eat while you work, and... He hesitated, then plunged forward. I'd like to join you. If that's okay, we could have dinner together. Elena bit her lip, clearly torn between professional boundaries and personal desire. Thomas, I don't think... Please, Mama. Sophia's eyes had gone enormous, pleading. I like Thomas. He's nice. And he said thunder is applause. Sophia makes an excellent argument, Thomas said, trying not to smile. Thunder is applause. That's practically irrefutable logic. Elena laughed, the sound light and genuine. You're both impossible. Is that a yes? Thomas asked, hope evident in his voice, despite his attempt at casual confidence. That's a yes, Elena conceded, shaking her head with mock exasperation. But I'm still doing the cleaning I was hired to do. This isn't a social call. Absolutely. Professional standards must be maintained. Thomas pulled out his phone. What do you like on your pizza? Pepperoni, Sophia declared immediately. Pepperoni it is. Elena? Whatever Sophia wants is fine, Elena said, but Thomas caught the wistful look in her eyes as she glanced at his phone screen showing the menu. That wasn't the question. What do you want, Elena? The simple question seemed to carry more weight than it should. Elena met his eyes, and Thomas had the sense they were talking about more than pizza toppings. Mushroom and black olives, she said quietly. I haven't had that in years. Sophia doesn't like it, and ordering 2 pizzas for just us seemed wasteful. Then we'll get 3, Thomas said firmly, adding items to his order. Pepperoni for Sophia, mushroom and olive for you, and I'll get a combination. We can all share. He paused at the checkout screen. Breadsticks, salad. Thomas, this is too much. It's just food, Elena. Let me do this, please. Elena studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. Thomas completed the order, feeling ridiculously pleased with himself over something as simple as pizza. But it wasn't simple, not really. It was about providing, about caring, about making Elena feel like she didn't have to shoulder everything alone. 30 minutes, he announced, which gives you time to work and gives me time to... He looked around his office, realizing he had no idea how to prepare for something like this. He'd had business dinners, formal affairs, catered events, but pizza with a woman and her daughter in his office, this was entirely new territory. You could clear off the conference table, Elena suggested, already gathering her cleaning supplies. We can eat there. Right, yes, conference table. Thomas felt absurdly nervous, like he was 16 again preparing for his first date. He moved into the conference room, removing his laptop and papers, wiping down the surface with unnecessary vigor. Sophia appeared in the doorway, watching him with open curiosity. Are you and my mama friends now? Thomas paused mid-wipe. I'd like to be. Is that okay with you? Uh-huh. Mama doesn't have a lot of friends. She's always working. Sophia came further into the room, trailing her fingers along the edge of the table. My daddy left because he said we were too much work. The casual delivery of such a devastating statement made Thomas's heart clench. He set down his cleaning cloth and knelt to Sophia's eye level. Sophia, listen to me very carefully. You and your mama are not too much work. You're not too much of anything. Your daddy made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and that was about him, not about you. Do you understand? Sophia's eyes, so large and expressive, filled with the kind of ancient sadness no 7-year-old should carry. Mama says that too, but sometimes I worry I did something wrong, that if I'd been better, he would have stayed. Oh, sweetheart. Thomas reached out instinctively, then paused, waiting for permission. Sophia stepped into his arms, and Thomas held her carefully, feeling her small body shake with silent tears. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt people, especially people they should protect, but that's never the child's fault. Never. He felt more than heard Elena's presence in the doorway. When he looked up, she was standing there frozen, one hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Their eyes met over Sophia's head, and Thomas saw her gratitude, her pain, her fear, and her hope all mingled together. Sophia pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Sorry, I got your fancy suit wet. Suit's dry, Thomas assured her, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. And you never have to apologize for having feelings. Not to me, not to anyone. Your feelings are valid and important, okay? Okay, Sophia whispered. Elena moved into the room, pulling Sophia into her own embrace. Baby girl, where did all this come from? You haven't talked about your daddy in months. I don't know, Sophia mumbled against her mother's shoulder. Being here, seeing how Thomas has a big office and is important, it made me think maybe Daddy left because we weren't important enough, because he wanted important things and we were just regular. There is nothing just regular about either of you, Thomas said with quiet intensity. Elena, you started a business from nothing. You provide for your daughter. You work harder than most executives I know. And Sophia, you're brave and kind and smart. You both matter. You're both important. More important than any business deal or corner office. Elena's tears fell freely now. Thomas, we don't need your pity. This isn't pity, Thomas interrupted gently. Pity is looking down on someone. I'm looking at you, Elena. Really seeing you, and what I see is strength and grace and determination. What I see is a woman who's built a life for herself and her daughter, despite someone trying to tear that life apart. That's not pitiable, That's extraordinary. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of the elevator chiming. Thomas stood, grateful for the interruption, for a moment to let the emotional intensity dissipate. That'll be the pizza. He retrieved the food, paying the delivery driver with a generous tip, and brought the boxes back to the conference room. Elena had composed herself, though her eyes were still red. Sophia had recovered with the resilience of childhood, already eyeing the pizza boxes with renewed interest. They spread the food across the table, and for a moment no one quite knew how to begin. The weight of what had just been said hung in the air, shifting the dynamic between them in ways both thrilling and terrifying. "So," Thomas said, serving Sophia a slice of pepperoni, "tell me about school, Sophia. What's your favorite subject?" And just like that, the moment shifted again. Sophia launched into an enthusiastic description of her art class, where they were learning about famous painters. Elena gradually relaxed, even laughing at Sophia's animated gestures as she described trying to paint like Jackson Pollock and accidentally getting paint in her hair. Thomas found himself mesmerized by them both, the way Elena's entire face transformed when she laughed, the way Sophia's hands moved constantly as she talked, conducting an invisible orchestra of words, the easy affection between them, the gentle teasing, the obvious love. "What about you?" Elena asked, pulling Thomas from his observation. "Did you always want to run a tech company?" "Actually, no." Thomas helped himself to a second slice, surprised by his own appetite. "I wanted to be an architect. I used to spend hours drawing buildings, imagining structures that could change how people lived and worked together." "What change?" Elena asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "Rebecca." Thomas smiled at the memory. "She saw one of my designs, a community center concept I'd done for a class project. She said it was beautiful, but that it would never get built unless someone had the business savvy to make it happen. So she encouraged me to minor in business administration. Turned out I had a knack for it." "Did you ever build your community center?" Sophia asked around a mouthful of cheese. "No, I got caught up in the business side of things, made a lot of money, lost sight of the original dream." Thomas looked at his half-eaten pizza, memories washing over him. "Rebecca used to say I'd come back to it someday, that once we'd built our nest egg, I could return to designing buildings that mattered, places that brought communities together." "And then she died," Elena said softly, "and the dream died with her." "Yes," Thomas admitted. "I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that didn't hurt. Made more money than I knew what to do with, acquired companies, built an empire. But I never built anything that mattered, nothing that would have made Rebecca proud." Sophia tilted her head, studying him with those two wise eyes. "I think she'd be proud that you made thunder not scary. That matters. Out of the mouths of children." Thomas felt his eyes burn with unshed tears. "You know what, Sophia? I think you're right." They finished eating in comfortable silence, punctuated by small moments of connection. Thomas handing Elena a napkin before she asked for it, Elena serving him a slice of his favorite combination without prompting, Sophia sharing her last breadstick with them both. When the food was gone, Elena stood and began gathering the garbage. "All right, I really do need to get some work done, or I'll feel guilty about this whole dinner." "Let me help," Thomas offered, standing as well. "Absolutely not. You're paying me to clean, not the other way around." But her smile took the sting out of the refusal. "Then I'll entertain Sophia while you work. We can't have her getting bored." Elena hesitated, clearly torn between professional boundaries and personal trust. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Sophia and I will be fine. Won't we, Sophia?" "Can we draw?" Sophia asked hopefully. "Do you have paper?" Thomas thought of the expensive cardstock in Margaret's office, the colored pens she kept for marking up presentations. "I think we can find something." Elena watched them for a moment longer, then nodded. "Okay, but Sophia, you listen to Thomas, and no running around, okay?" "Okay, Mama." As Elena moved through the office with her cleaning supplies, Thomas and Sophia settled at his desk. He produced Margaret's cardstock and pens, and Sophia's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "What should we draw?" she asked, already selecting colours with the seriousness of an artist choosing a palette. "How about you teach me to draw like you did in the picture you gave me, with the sun and the lightning?" Sophia beamed and began instructing him with the authority of a 7-year-old art teacher. "First, you have to make the lightning look happy. That's the secret. Most people make it scary, but you have to give it a smile." Thomas followed her instructions, creating lightning bolts that somehow managed to look cheerful rather than menacing. They drew together in companionable silence, occasionally interrupted by Sophia's gentle corrections or Thomas's questions. "Thomas," Sophia said after a while, not looking up from her drawing, "do you get lonely in this big office by yourself?" The question struck deeper than Thomas expected. "Yes," he admitted, "I do. Very lonely. Me too sometimes, when Mama's at work and I'm with the babysitter. It's not the same." Sophia added a sun to her picture, its rays extending across the page like arms reaching out. "But tonight isn't lonely." "No," Thomas agreed, his throat tight. "Tonight isn't lonely at all." They continued drawing until Elena reappeared, her cleaning supplies organized and stored. She stopped in the doorway, and Thomas looked up to find her watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. Longing, hope, fear, perhaps all three. "The office is done," she said quietly. "We should get going. It's getting late." Thomas glanced at his watch, surprised to find it was nearly 8:30. The time had flown by, each moment filled with easy conversation and genuine connection. The thought of them leaving, of returning to his empty mansion and his carefully controlled solitude, felt suddenly unbearable. "Before you go," he found himself saying, "there's something I want to ask, both of you." He stood, moving around the desk to face them both. "Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks. My late wife's family has invited me to their dinner. I've been avoiding them for years, but this year I'm going to go, and I'd like you both to come with me as my guests." Eleanor's eyes widened. "Thomas, that's your family. That's intimate. We couldn't—" "You could," Thomas insisted. "Emma, Rebecca's sister, specifically told me to bring someone special. And you are, both of you. You're special to me." "We barely know each other," Elena protested, but Thomas could see the hope warring with caution in her eyes. "Then let's change that. Let's spend the next 2 weeks getting to know each other. Really know each other. Have dinner with me. Not here in the office, but at real restaurants. Let me take you both to the aquarium, the science center, anywhere Sophia wants to go. Let me be part of your lives, and let you be part of mine." "That sounds like dating," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Thomas agreed simply. "It does." Sophia looked between the two adults, her young face serious. "Mama, do you like Thomas?" Eleanor's gaze locked with Thomas's. "Yes, baby. I do." "Do you like him like him? Like Princess Anna likes Kristoff in Frozen?" Despite the tension, both adults smiled. "Maybe something like that," Elena admitted. "Then we should go to Thanksgiving," Sophia declared with the confident logic of childhood. "Because Mama never goes anywhere fun, and Thomas seems nice, and maybe Mama can like someone who won't leave us." The statement, so innocent and so devastating, hung in the air. Elena's face crumpled slightly, and Thomas stepped forward instinctively, his hand finding hers. "I won't leave," he said, the words a promise he had no right to make so soon but made anyway. "I'm not going anywhere, Sophia. Your Mama and you've reminded me what it feels like to be alive. I'm not walking away from that." "You can't promise that," Elena whispered, but she didn't pull her hand away. "People always promise, and then life happens, and you're right. I can't promise nothing will ever happen. Life is unpredictable and sometimes cruel." Thomas squeezed her hand gently. "But I can promise I'll show up. I can promise I'll try. I can promise that if something scares me or seems hard, I won't just disappear. I'll communicate. I'll work through it." He paused. "I can promise that you and Sophia deserve someone who sees how extraordinary you are and fights to keep you in their life." Elena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "This is crazy. It's too fast. We shouldn't—maybe, but maybe sometimes life doesn't follow the rules we set for it. Maybe sometimes the universe sends us exactly what we need when we need it, and the only mistake we can make is being too afraid to reach out and take it. That's a lot of maybes, Elena said, but a small smile tugged at her lips. Then let's find out together, Thomas said. One day at a time. No pressure. But please, say you'll come to Thanksgiving. Say you'll let me take you both to dinner this weekend. Say you'll give this a chance. Sophia tugged on her mother's sleeve. Say yes, Mama. Please. Elena looked down at her daughter, then back at Thomas, his hand still holding hers, warm and solid and real. Thomas watched her internal struggle play out across her features, saw the moment when hope won over fear, when possibility triumphed over past hurt. Yes, Elena breathed. Okay, yes to dinner, yes to Thanksgiving, yes to giving this a chance. Thomas felt something bloom in his chest, something he'd thought died with Rebecca 4 years ago. Joy, pure, uncomplicated, terrifying joy. Thank you, he said, inadequate words for the magnitude of what she'd just given him. They stood there, hands linked, Sophia between them, and Thomas had the sudden image of Sophia's drawing come to life. 3 figures holding hands under a smiling sun, with cheerful lightning dancing overhead, thunder as applause. Celebration instead of fear. The moment was broken by Sophia's enormous yawn. Elena laughed softly, the sound like music. Someone needs to get to bed. They gathered their things, the evening drawing to a close, but feeling more like a beginning. Thomas walked them to the elevator, reluctant to let them go, already anticipating Saturday and the dinner they'd planned. Saturday at 6, he confirmed. I'll pick you both up. Text me your address. Saturday at 6, Elena agreed. She hesitated, then rose on her tiptoes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Thank you, Thomas, for tonight, for everything. Before he could respond, she'd stepped into the elevator, pulling Sophia with her. The doors began to close, and Thomas caught one last glimpse of Sophia waving enthusiastically, Elena's soft smile, and then they were gone. Thomas stood alone in the hallway, his hand touching his cheek where Elena had kissed him, and felt his carefully reconstructed world shifting on its axis. 4 years of isolation, of controlled grief, of measured existence, and it had taken one woman and her daughter to remind him that life was meant to be lived, not endured. He returned to his office, seeing Sophia's cheerful drawings still spread across his desk, Elena's cleaning supplies neatly organized in the corner, the remnants of their shared dinner in the conference room. Evidence of life, of connection, of possibility. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Elena. This is my address. And Thomas? I'm scared, but I'm also hopeful, and I haven't felt hopeful in a very long time, so thank you for that too. Thomas typed his response carefully. I'm scared too, but I'm learning that being scared and being brave aren't opposites. Sometimes being brave means doing something even though you're terrified. See you Saturday. 3 dots appeared, indicating Elena was typing. Then, see you Saturday, Sophia says thunder is applauding for us. Thomas smiled, that unfamiliar expression becoming more natural with each occurrence. He looked at Sophia's drawing on his wall, at the smiling sun and cheerful lightning, and thought perhaps she was right. Perhaps the universe was celebrating this new beginning, applauding 2 broken people finding the courage to heal together. He gathered his things and headed for the elevator, but instead of feeling the usual dread at returning to his empty mansion, he felt anticipation. Anticipation for Saturday, for Thanksgiving, for all the moments yet to come. For the first time in 4 years, Thomas Whitmore had something to look forward to beyond the next business deal or corporate acquisition. He had hope, and he had 2 people who'd given it to him, 1 drawing and 1 thunderstorm at a time. Saturday morning arrived with Seattle's typical November drizzle, the kind of soft rain that seemed less like weather and more like the city's natural state of being. Thomas stood in his walk-in closet, staring at rows of expensive suits and designer casual wear, feeling completely paralyzed by indecision. What did one wear to dinner with a woman and her 7-year-old daughter? Too formal would seem pretentious. Too casual might suggest he wasn't taking this seriously. He settled on dark jeans, a charcoal sweater, and a leather jacket, hoping it struck the right balance between effort and approachability. Then he spent 20 minutes second-guessing the choice, changing his shirt twice and wondering when he'd become this person who obsessed over clothing. Margaret's text arrived at noon. "Stop panicking. You look fine. Whatever you're wearing, you look fine. Now breathe and remember she already said yes, which means she likes you despite your tendency to overthink everything." Thomas typed back, "I'm not panicking. You texted me at 7 this morning asking if I thought roses were too much for a first date. You're panicking." She had a point. Thomas looked at the bouquet he'd ordered from Pike Place Market's best florist. A careful arrangement of roses, lilies, and something the florist had called status in soft purples and whites. Not too romantic, not too formal, suitable for both Elena and Sophia. Or so he hoped. "They're perfect," Margaret's next text read. "Stop spiraling. She's lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have her. Now go be happy. That's an order from someone who's known you long enough to boss you around." Thomas smiled despite his nerves. Margaret had been doing exactly that since he'd hired her 12 years ago, and he wouldn't have it any other way. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Thomas tried to work, reviewing contracts and financial reports, but his mind kept wandering. He found himself thinking about Elena's smile, the way her whole face lit up when she laughed. He thought about Sophia's innocent wisdom, her cheerful drawings, the trust she'd shown him when sharing her pain about her father. At 4 o'clock, unable to stand his own company any longer, Thomas drove to the Seattle Aquarium. He'd mentioned it on Thursday as a place Sophia might enjoy, and an idea had been forming since then. He spent an hour talking with the aquarium's education director, making arrangements that brought a genuine smile to his face for the first time all day. By 5:30, Thomas was in his car, the bouquet on the passenger seat, driving toward the address Elena had texted him. She lived in Greenwood, a neighborhood north of downtown, known for its family-friendly atmosphere and tree-lined streets. The houses here were modest but well-maintained, a far cry from his mansion on Mercer Island, but somehow more inviting, more real. Elena's home was a small craftsman-style house with a covered porch and a tiny front yard featuring a garden that had been put to bed for winter. Thomas noticed the careful attention to detail, the porch swept clean, the house numbers polished, a welcome mat that actually looked welcoming. This was a home, not just a house. He sat in his car for a moment, gathering his courage, feeling more nervous than he had before any business meeting or corporate presentation. This mattered. Elena and Sophia mattered. The weight of that realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. Thomas grabbed the flowers and walked to the front door, his heart hammering against his ribs. Before he could knock, the door flew open, and Sophia stood there in a purple dress covered with sparkles, her hair styled in elaborate braids that must have taken Elena considerable time and effort. "You're here!" Sophia announced unnecessarily, bouncing on her toes with excitement. "Mama, Thomas is here, and he brought flowers." Elena appeared behind her daughter, and Thomas forgot how to breathe. She wore a deep blue dress that fell to just below her knees, simple but elegant, with her hair loose around her shoulders for the first time since he'd met her. She'd applied subtle makeup that highlighted her warm brown eyes, and when she smiled at him, Thomas felt the full impact of her beauty like a physical force. "Hi," she said softly, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "You look nice." "So do you," Thomas managed, his voice coming out rougher than intended. "Both of you. You both look beautiful." He held out the flowers, suddenly feeling like they were inadequate. "These are for you." Elena took them carefully, her fingers brushing his, sending electricity up his arm. "They're gorgeous, Thomas. You didn't have to." "I wanted to." He crouched down to Sophia's level. "And I have something for you too, Sophia." From his jacket pocket, he produced a small box. Sophia's eyes went enormous. "For me? Really? Really?" Thomas opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a small lightning bolt with a tiny smile carved into it. "I had it made special, so you'll always remember that thunder is just applause." Sophia's squeal of delight could probably be heard 3 blocks away. She threw her arms around Thomas's neck, hugging him with the unself-conscious affection of childhood. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mama, look, it's smiling lightning." Elena's eyes had filled with tears. "Thomas, this is too much. You can't just—" "I can," Thomas said gently, standing and meeting her gaze. "Let me do this, Elena. Let me show you both that you matter to me." The moment hung between them, weighted with emotion, until Sophia grabbed Thomas's hand with one of hers and Elena's with the other. "Can we go now? I'm starving." The tension broke, and they laughed together. Elena grabbed her purse and a coat for Sophia, and they walked to Thomas's car, a Mercedes sedan that was nice but not ostentatiously so. He'd deliberately chosen not to drive his Aston Martin, not wanting to overwhelm them. "Where are we going?" Sophia asked as Thomas helped her with her seatbelt. "It's a surprise," Thomas said, catching Elena's eye over Sophia's head. "But I think you'll like it." He drove them to a restaurant called the Pink Door, tucked away in Pike Place Market. From the outside, it was easy to miss, marked only by its titular pink door with no sign. But inside, it was magic. Exposed brick walls, twinkling lights, and an atmosphere of warmth and Italian charm. Best of all, the restaurant featured live entertainment, including occasional aerialists performing above the dining room. "Whoa!" Sophia breathed as they entered, her eyes taking in everything at once. "Mama, look at the lights." The host, recognizing Thomas, led them to a corner table with a perfect view of the performance space. Thomas had called ahead, ensuring they'd have the best spot in the house. "This place is wonderful," Elena said, looking around with genuine delight. "How did you find it?" "Rebecca and I used to come here," Thomas admitted, and saw Elena's expression shift to concern. He reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "That's okay. That's good, actually. This place holds happy memories, and I want to make new happy memories here, with you." Elena squeezed his hand, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Thank you for sharing it with us." Dinner unfolded like a perfect dream. Sophia was entranced by the aerialist who performed above them, a graceful woman in flowing silks who seemed to defy gravity. They ordered family-style Italian food, passing plates and sharing bites, laughing when Sophia got marinara sauce on her nose and Elena tried to wipe it off, while Thomas snapped a photo on his phone. "Tell me about your week," Thomas said during a lull in the entertainment. "What's been happening in the life of Elena Castellanos?" Elena took a sip of her wine, considering, "Well, I officially gave notice to all my other clients. As of next Monday, Pristine Solutions is exclusively yours." Thomas felt a surge of satisfaction he tried not to examine too closely. How did they take it? Most were understanding. A few were disappointed, but I referred them to another good service. She paused, her expression growing more serious. "Thomas, I need to be honest with you about something. This arrangement, the exclusive contract, it's more money than I've ever made in my life. It's life-changing money. And part of me worries that I'm accepting it for the wrong reasons." "What reasons would those be?" "Because I like you," Elena said quietly, aware of Sophia's attention on the aerialist above them. "Because this feels like more than just a business arrangement, and I'm afraid I'm mixing personal feelings with professional judgment." Thomas leaned forward, his voice low and earnest. "Elena, I'm going to tell you something my father told me when I started my first business. He said the best deals are the ones where both parties feel like they're getting more than they're giving. That's what this is. You're getting financial security, and I'm getting someone I trust taking care of the spaces where I live and work. Someone who'll notice if something's wrong, who'll care about the details. And yes, someone I have feelings for. But that doesn't make it a bad deal. It makes it a good one. Your father sounds wise." He was. "He died 6 years ago, just before I met Rebecca. I wish they could have met each other." Thomas smiled sadly. "I wish he could meet you and Sophia too. He would have loved you both." Sophia chose that moment to look away from the performance. "What was your daddy like, Thomas?" "He was kind and patient. He taught me that success isn't measured by how much money you make, but by how many people you help along the way." Thomas felt the familiar ache of loss, but gentler now, softened by time and the presence of these two people who were somehow teaching him to live again. He would have told me I've been measuring success wrong for the past 4 years. How have you been measuring it? Elena asked. By how little I felt, by how well I could avoid pain. Thomas met her eyes. But avoiding pain means avoiding everything else too. Joy, connection, love. I think my father would say that's not success at all. That's just existing. Elena's hand found his across the table again, her touch warm and grounding. And now I'm trying to learn the difference between existing and living. You and Sophia are teaching me. The aerialist finished her performance to enthusiastic applause, and Sophia clapped harder than anyone, bouncing in her seat with excitement. That was amazing! Did you see how high she went, Mama? Did you see? I saw, baby. It was beautiful. They ordered dessert, tiramisu to share, and Sophia regaled them with her own dreams of flying like the aerialist. Elena shared stories from her week, the small victories and frustrations of running a business and raising a daughter alone. Thomas found himself fascinated by every detail, hungry for information about their lives, wanting to know everything. What about you? Elena asked as they finished their coffee. What does Thomas Whitmore do when he's not working? The question stumped him. I work. That's mostly what I do. Mostly? What about the rest of the time? Thomas thought about his empty mansion, his solitary dinners, his weekends spent in his home office reviewing reports that could easily wait until Monday. I exist, he admitted. I go through motions. I tell myself I'm living, but really I'm just filling time until I can go back to work. That sounds lonely, Sophia said with devastating simplicity. It is, very lonely, but I'm hoping that's going to change. He looked at Elena. I want it to change. Change is scary, Elena said softly. Terrifying, Thomas agreed, but I'm learning that some things are worth being terrified for. They left the restaurant around 9 o'clock, Sophia fighting sleep but insisting she wasn't tired. Thomas drove them home through Seattle's rain-slicked streets, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement like liquid gold. Soft jazz played on the radio, and Elena hummed along, her voice quiet but lovely. When they pulled up to Elena's house, Sophia was fully asleep in the back seat, her head tilted at an angle that would definitely cause neck pain if left too long. I'll carry her in, Thomas offered. You don't have to. I want to. Thomas unbuckled Sophia carefully, lifting her with ease. She stirred slightly, mumbling something about flying, then settled her head against his shoulder with complete trust. The gesture did something to Thomas's heart, cracking it open even further. Elena unlocked the door, and Thomas followed her inside. The house was exactly what he'd expected, cozy, cluttered with the evidence of a child's life and filled with love. School artwork covered the refrigerator, books spilled from overstuffed shelves, and photographs lined the walls, Elena and Sophia at various ages, capturing their journey together. Her room is upstairs, Elena whispered, leading the way. Sophia's bedroom was the explosion of purple and butterflies, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and stuffed animals crowding every surface. Elena pulled back the covers, and Thomas laid Sophia down gently, helping Elena remove her shoes and tucking the blanket around her small body. Sophia's eyes fluttered open briefly. Thomas, you're still here. I'm still here, he confirmed quietly. Good, I like when you're here. Her eyes closed again, and she was asleep. Thomas and Elena stood there for a moment, watching Sophia sleep, and Thomas felt the full weight of what was happening between them. This wasn't just about Elena, it was about Sophia too. It was about becoming part of their lives, taking responsibility for this child's happiness and security. The magnitude of it should have sent him running. Instead, it felt right, more right than anything had felt in 4 years. They crept out of Sophia's room, leaving the door cracked open. Downstairs, Elena turned to face him, her expression vulnerable in the soft lamplight. "Would you like coffee?" she asked. "Or are you in a hurry to get home?" "I'm never in a hurry to go home," Thomas admitted. "It's just an empty house. Coffee sounds perfect." Elena moved to the kitchen, and Thomas followed, watching as she prepared a pot with practiced efficiency. The kitchen was small but functional, with evidence of Sophia's presence everywhere. Her drawings held to the refrigerator with magnets, her plastic cup in the dish drainer, her backpack hanging by the door. "This is a home," Thomas said quietly. "A real home, not like my house." "Tell me about your house," Elena said, handing him a steaming mug. They moved to the living room, settling on the worn but comfortable couch. Thomas told her about the Mercer Island mansion, about the 10,000 square feet of empty space, about how he'd left everything exactly as Rebecca had arranged it, turning the house into a museum of their life together. "That must be hard," Elena said, "living in a shrine to the past." "It's suffocating," Thomas admitted, "but I didn't know how to change it. Changing it felt like letting her go, and I wasn't ready to let her go. And now I'm starting to understand that letting her go doesn't mean forgetting her. It means honoring what she gave me by actually living the life she would have wanted me to live." He set down his mug, turning to face Elena fully. "She would want me to be happy. She'd want me to love again. And I think I'm starting to." Elena's breath caught. "Thomas, I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. But Elena, I haven't felt this alive in 4 years. You and Sophia, you've reminded me what it means to care about something beyond work and accomplishments. You've reminded me what it means to hope." "I'm scared," Elena whispered. "I'm so scared, Thomas. I let someone into our lives before, and he left. He looked at Sophia and decided being a father was too hard. He looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the effort. What if I decide the same thing?" Thomas finished. He reached for her hand, holding it between both of his. "Elena, I can't promise you that I won't ever make mistakes. I can't promise that this will be easy, but I can promise you that I see you, really see you. I see a woman who's built a life and a business from nothing, who raises her daughter with grace and love, who works harder than anyone I know and still finds energy to braid Sophia's hair into elaborate styles for a dinner date." Elena laughed wetly, tears gathering in her eyes. "Those braids took 40 minutes, and they were beautiful, just like her, just like you." Thomas wiped away a tear that had escaped down Elena's cheek. "I see you, and I'm not looking away. I see Sophia, and she's not too much or too difficult or too anything. She's wonderful. You're both wonderful, and I want to be part of your lives, if you'll let me." "What if we mess this up?" Elena asked. "What if we try and fail? Then we'll have tried. That's more than either of us has done in years, isn't it? We'll have been brave enough to reach for something good instead of hiding in our safe, lonely corners." Elena studied his face, searching for something. Thomas let her look, hiding nothing, letting her see his hope and his fear and his genuine desire to build something real with her and her daughter. "Okay," Elena finally said. "Okay, let's try. Let's be brave together." Thomas felt relief and joy crash over him like a wave. "Yeah? Yeah." Elena smiled through her tears. "But slowly, okay? For Sophia's sake, we take this slowly. We make sure it's real before we fully commit." "Absolutely. As slow as you need." Thomas squeezed her hand. "Though I should tell you, I already asked Sophia's permission." "You what?" "Thursday night when you were cleaning. I asked Sophia if it was okay if I wanted to be friends with you both. She gave her approval." Thomas grinned. "She said you don't have many friends because you're always working, and that I seem nice because I make thunder not scary." Elena laughed, the sound free and genuine. "She's not wrong on either count." They sat together on the couch, talking and laughing until nearly midnight, sharing stories from their pasts, their hopes for the future, the small details that make up a life. Thomas learned that Elena had immigrated from Mexico when she was 10, that her parents had passed away within a year of each other, leaving her alone, except for Sophia. Elena learned that Thomas had a sister living in Portland whom he hadn't spoken to in 3 years, that his favorite food was his mother's lasagna recipe that he'd never learned to make, that he secretly loved old black and white movies but never watched them because Rebecca had been the one to introduce him to them. "We should watch one together," Elena suggested. "The 3 of us. Sophia's never seen a black and white movie." "That's a crime against cinema," Thomas declared with mock seriousness. "We'll have to remedy that immediately." "Tomorrow?" Elena asked, then looked surprised at her own boldness. "Tomorrow?" Thomas agreed without hesitation. I'll bring the movies and the popcorn. You provide the company. Deal." Thomas reluctantly stood, knowing he needed to leave despite wanting to stay. Elena walked him to the door, and they stood in the small entryway, neither quite ready for the night to end. "Thank you," Elena said quietly, "for dinner, for the flowers, for Sophia's bracelet, for everything. Thank you for saying yes, for giving me a chance, for being brave enough to hope." They stood close, the space between them charged with possibility. Thomas raised his hand slowly, cupping Elena's cheek, giving her every opportunity to step back. But she leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for just a moment. "I want to kiss you," Thomas said honestly, "but I also want to do this right. I don't want to rush." Elena opened her eyes, looking up at him with an expression that made his heart race. "What if I want you to kiss me? Then I'd say you make an excellent argument." Thomas leaned down slowly, giving Elena every chance to change her mind. But she rose to meet him, her hand coming to rest on his chest, right over his racing heart. Their lips met softly, gently, a question and an answer all at once. The kiss was brief, sweet, and perfect. When they pulled apart, Thomas rested his forehead against Elena's, both of them smiling in the darkness. "Wow," Elena breathed. "Yeah," Thomas agreed. "Wow. You should probably go before Sophia wakes up and finds us like this." "Probably." But Thomas didn't move, not wanting to break the moment. "Thomas?" "Yeah? I'm really glad you hired my cleaning service." Thomas laughed, the sound full of joy. "Best business decision I ever made." He finally forced himself to step back, to move toward the door. Elena followed, opening it to reveal Seattle's ever-present drizzle. "Text me when you get home safe," Elena requested. "I will. And Elena, dream about tomorrow, about us watching old movies with Sophia, about all the tomorrows we're going to have." "I will," she promised. Thomas walked to his car, turning back once to see Elena silhouetted in her doorway, backlit by the warm glow of her home. She waved, and he waved back, feeling like a teenager after his first date. The drive home passed in a blur of happiness. Thomas found himself singing along to the radio, something he hadn't done in years. When he pulled into his mansion's circular driveway, the house looked different somehow. Not a shrine or a prison, but simply a house that could be transformed into a home again if he was brave enough to try. He texted Elena as promised, "Home safe, already counting the hours until tomorrow." Her response came quickly. "Sophia's already planning her outfit for movie day. She says we need matching pajamas because that's what families do for movie nights. Is that okay?" "The family part?" Thomas's vision blurred with sudden tears. "That's more than okay. That's perfect." "Good. See you tomorrow, Thomas." "See you tomorrow, Elena." Thomas walked into his empty mansion, but for the first time in 4 years, it didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility, full of hope, full of the promise of all the tomorrows to come. He climbed the stairs to his bedroom, catching sight of himself in the mirror. The man looking back at him was different from the one who'd stood here that morning, paralyzed by the choice of what to wear. This man was smiling. This man had hope in his eyes. This man was alive again, truly alive, and it was beautiful and terrifying and absolutely worth every moment of fear. Thomas changed for bed, but before turning out the light, he pulled out his phone and looked at the photos he'd taken during dinner. Elena laughing at something Sophia said, Sophia's face full of wonder as she watched the aerialist. A selfie the three of them had taken, crowded together with the restaurant's twinkling lights in the background. They looked like a family, and maybe, Thomas thought as sleep finally claimed him, maybe that's exactly what they were becoming. Thanksgiving morning arrived crisp and clear, one of those rare Seattle November days when the sky actually remembered it could be blue. Thomas stood in his kitchen, a kitchen that had seen more use in the past 2 weeks than in the previous 4 years, preparing dishes to bring to Emma's dinner. The house smelled of roasted vegetables and the apple pie cooling on the counter, scents that made the massive space feel almost homey. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Sophia wants to know if it's too late to back out. She's nervous about meeting your family." Thomas smiled and typed back, "Tell her I'm nervous too. But we'll be nervous together, and that makes it easier. Also, Emma's kids are around her age. She'll have built-in friends. She says okay, but only if you promise the turkey won't be dry. Apparently that's very important to her. Emma is an excellent cook. The turkey will be perfect, I promise. Thomas loaded his car with the dishes he'd prepared, marveling at how natural it felt. 2 weeks ago, he couldn't have imagined himself cooking for a family gathering. 2 weeks ago, he couldn't have imagined doing much of anything beyond work and solitary existence. But the past 14 days had transformed him in ways he was still processing. There had been the Sunday movie marathon, where Sophia had fallen asleep between him and Elena on the couch, her small body curled against his side with complete trust. There had been the Wednesday, when he'd picked Sophia up from school because Elena's car had broken down, and Sophia had introduced him to her teacher as my mom's special friend Thomas, who makes thunder nice. There had been the late-night phone conversations with Elena after Sophia went to bed, talking about everything and nothing, building the foundation of something real and lasting. And there had been last night, when Elena and Sophia had come to his mansion for the first time. Sophia's eyes had gone enormous as they'd driven through the gates, taking in the sprawling grounds and the house that looked more like a hotel than a home. "You live here," Sophia had breathed, "all by yourself?" "I have been," Thomas had admitted, suddenly seeing the place through their eyes. The cold perfection, the unused rooms, the sense of a life suspended in time. "But I'm hoping that might change." "What do you think? Too big?" "It's like a castle," Sophia had said, not quite answering the question. "Do you have a princess tower?" Elena had laughed, squeezing Thomas's hand. "Baby, I don't think Thomas has a princess tower." "Actually," Thomas had said, "there's a turret room on the 3rd floor. It's full of boxes right now, but it does have windows all around. It could definitely be a princess tower, if someone wanted to make it one." The look Elena had given him then, hope mixed with fear, mixed with something that might have been love, had made his heart stutter in his chest. They'd spent the evening planning how to transform the mansion, making it feel less like a museum and more like a home. Sophia had drawn elaborate plans for her potential princess tower, complete with a reading nook and a telescope for looking at stars. Elena had gently suggested removing some of Rebecca's things, not erasing her memory, but making space for new memories to form. "I want to see pictures of her," Elena had said quietly after Sophia had gone to explore the enormous backyard. "I want to know who she was, what she loved, what made her laugh. She was part of you, Thomas. I don't want to erase that. I just want to make room for us too." Thomas had pulled out photo albums then, sitting with Elena on the couch and telling stories about Rebecca. It should have been painful, but instead it felt like healing, like introducing two people he loved across the boundary of time and loss. "She was beautiful," Elena had said, studying a photo of Rebecca laughing at something off-camera. "And she looked so happy. You both do." "We were. And I think," Thomas had taken a deep breath, "I think she'd be happy I found you, both of you." Rebecca believed in love, in family, in second chances. She'd want this for me. Now, driving toward Emma's house in Kirkland, Thomas felt that same sense of rightness. He'd called Emma earlier in the week, explaining about Elena and Sophia, nervous about how his late wife's family would react. "Thomas," Emma had said, her voice thick with emotion, "Rebecca would be thrilled. We're thrilled. We've been so worried about you, watching you disappear into work and loneliness. If these two people have brought you back to us, we already love them." Thomas pulled up to Elena's house at noon, as planned. Before he could get out of the car, the front door burst open and Sophia ran out, resplendent in a dress covered with autumn leaves and what appeared to be her entire collection of hair clips. "Thomas, we're ready!" "Well, Mama's almost ready. She changed her outfit like 5 times and keeps asking me if she looks okay, and I keep telling her she looks beautiful, but she won't believe me." Sophia delivered this entire speech without taking a breath, climbing into the back seat and buckling herself in with practiced efficiency. Thomas laughed, walking to the house where Elena stood in the doorway, looking absolutely radiant in a rust-colored dress that brought out the warmth in her eyes. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "Sophia's right. I'm nervous," Elena admitted. "What if they don't like us? What if they think we're trying to replace Rebecca?" "They're going to love you, Because I love you, Thomas said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Elena's eyes widened. What? Thomas realized what he'd said, and instead of panicking, felt a sense of calm certainty. I love you, Elena. I know it's only been 2 weeks. I know it's fast, but I love you. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you braid Sophia's hair even when you're exhausted. I love how you make me laugh, and how you challenge me to be better. I love that you're not trying to replace Rebecca, but making room for new love alongside the old. I love you. Tears streamed down Elena's face. Thomas, You don't have to say it back, he interrupted gently. I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest before we walk into that house and meet my family. I love you, and I love Sophia, and whatever happens today, that's not going to change. Elena grabbed his face with both hands and kissed him, passionate and certain. When they broke apart, she was smiling through her tears. I love you too, you impossible man. I've been falling in love with you since you told Sophia that broken awards don't matter and she does, since you made thunder into applause, since you looked at my daughter and saw someone precious instead of someone inconvenient. Mama, Thomas, can you please be mushy in the car? We're going to be late. Sophia's voice carried from the back seat, annoyed but also pleased. They laughed, the tension breaking, and climbed into the car. The drive to Kirkland took 30 minutes, filled with Sophia's chatter about what she was thankful for this year. Her list included her mama, Thomas, smiling lightning bracelets, the promise of a princess tower, and something called cheese bread that Thomas didn't fully understand, but Sophia assured him was very important. Emma's house was a sprawling ranch-style home in a neighborhood full of families. The driveway was already packed with cars, and Thomas could see movement through the windows, children running, adults laughing, the beautiful chaos of family. Ready? He asked, looking at Elena. No, she admitted, but let's do it anyway. They walked to the door together, Thomas carrying his dishes, Elena holding Sophia's hand. Before Thomas could knock, the door flew open and Emma stood there, older than Thomas remembered, but with Rebecca's same warm smile. Thomas! She pulled him into a fierce hug, careful not to disturb the dishes. Oh, it's so good to see you. Really see you, not just the ghost who showed up to sign papers and avoid conversation. She pulled back, looking at Elena and Sophia. And you must be Elena and Sophia. Welcome. Come in, come in. They were swept into a house filled with noise and laughter and life. Emma's husband David shook Thomas's hand with genuine warmth. Their 3 children, twin boys aged 9 and a daughter aged 6, immediately descended on Sophia like friendly puppies, pulling her away to show her their game room before she could protest. She'll be fine, Emma assured Elena, seeing her concern. My kids are social butterflies. They'll take good care of her. Elena relaxed slightly, allowing Thomas to guide her further into the house. More family members appeared. Rebecca's parents, who Thomas hadn't seen since the funeral, looking older but healthier than he'd feared. Rebecca's brother Mark with his new husband James. Various cousins and their partners, creating a swirl of faces and names that would take time to remember. But everyone was kind. Everyone was welcoming. And everyone seemed genuinely happy to see Thomas with Elena, as if his presence here, alive and engaged and in love, was the best gift they could receive. She would have liked you, Rebecca's mother, Catherine, said to Elena, as they all gathered in the kitchen preparing final dishes. Rebecca always said Thomas needed someone who would challenge him, who wouldn't let him hide in his work, someone who would remind him to live. I'm not trying to take her place, Elena said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of worry she'd been holding. Of course not, dear. No one could take her place. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for new love, new family. Catherine squeezed Elena's hand. My daughter loved Thomas with her whole heart, and because she loved him, she would want him to be happy. She would want him to love again. So please don't carry guilt about this. Carry joy instead. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Thank you. You don't know how much I needed to hear that. Thomas watched this exchange from across the kitchen, his heart full to bursting. This was what family looked like. Not perfection, but acceptance. Not erasing the past, but making space for the future. He caught Emma's eye, and she winked at him, mouthing, "She's perfect." Dinner was chaos in the best possible way. 3 tables had been set up to accommodate everyone, with the kids at their own table in the dining room, while the adults spread between the kitchen and living room. Thomas found himself at the main table with Elena, Emma, David, and Rebecca's parents, exactly where family should be. The food was spectacular. Emma had inherited their mother's cooking talents, and the conversation flowed easily. Thomas told stories about the business, about Margaret's attempts to force-feed him healthy snacks, about his plans to redesign his house to make it more livable. Elena talked about her cleaning business, about Sophia's love of art, about their small house in Greenwood that was big on love even if it was short on square footage. "Thomas has been helping us look at bigger places," Elena said, then immediately looked worried as if she'd revealed too much. But Emma just smiled. "Oh, are you two moving in together?" "We haven't decided anything officially," Thomas said carefully, "but we've been discussing possibilities. Elena's house is perfect for 2 people, but it's getting cramped, and my house is enormous but feels like a mausoleum. So we've been thinking about maybe finding something in between, something that could be ours, together." The word "ours" hung in the air, significant and certain. Rebecca's father, Robert, cleared his throat. "Thomas, can I speak with you for a moment, privately?" Thomas felt his stomach clench with nerves, but he nodded. They moved to the study, Robert closing the door behind them. For a long moment the older man just looked at Thomas, his expression unreadable. "I owe you an apology," Robert finally said. "After Rebecca died, I blamed you. It wasn't fair or rational, but grief makes us irrational. I thought if you'd been on time that day, if you'd driven together like you usually did, she'd still be alive. I avoided you because seeing you reminded me of what we'd lost." "Robert, Let me finish." Robert held up a hand. "I've spent 4 years carrying that blame, and I've watched you carry your own guilt. We've both been prisoners of that day, of choices we can't change, and pain we can't undo. But tonight, seeing you here with Elena and Sophia, seeing you actually living again, Thomas, that's when I finally understood that Rebecca wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want us trapped in grief. She'd want us celebrating life and love and new beginnings." Thomas's vision blurred with tears. "I loved her so much. I know you did, and you honor that love by living fully now, by loving Elena and Sophia the way you loved my daughter, completely, courageously, without holding back." Robert pulled Thomas into a hug, the first physical contact they'd had in 4 years. "Welcome back to the family, son, and bring Elena and Sophia with you. They're family now too." When they returned to the main room, Elena took one look at Thomas's face and immediately came to his side. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," Thomas said honestly, pulling her close. "Everything's perfect." After dinner, the adults gathered in the living room while the children played. Sophia had become fast friends with Emma's daughter Lily, and the 2 girls were showing each other their favorite toys and books. Thomas sat on the couch with Elena tucked against his side, watching the children play, feeling contentment settle over him like a warm blanket. "I have something to share," Emma announced, standing with a wine glass in her hand. "A toast, actually, to Thomas, who we thought we'd lost, but who found his way back to us. To Elena and Sophia, who reminded him that life is for living, and to Rebecca, who I know is looking down on all of us right now, absolutely delighted that her stubborn husband finally pulled his head out of his work and found love again." She raised her glass. "To family, to love, and to second chances." "To second chances," everyone echoed, glasses clinking. As the evening wound down, Sophia curled up between Thomas and Elena on the couch, fighting sleep but determined not to miss anything. Emma sat nearby, her own children similarly exhausted but happy. "You know," Emma said thoughtfully, "Rebecca and I used to talk about you having children someday. She wanted at least 3, said she'd fill your big empty house with noise and chaos and love." "I remember," Thomas said quietly, his hand finding Eleanor's. "She didn't get to do that. But Thomas, you can still fill that house. Not with Rebecca's children, but with the family you're building now. With Elena and Sophia. Maybe with more children, if that's what you both want. You can still have the life Rebecca dreamed of for you. just in a different form than either of you imagined. Thomas looked down at Sophia, now fully asleep against his chest, then at Elena, whose eyes reflected his own emotions: hope, love, possibility. "I'd like that," he said. "Very much." "So would I," Elena whispered. They left around 9 o'clock, Sophia sleeping in Thomas's arms as he carried her to the car. The goodbyes took another 20 minutes, with every family member hugging them, making plans for Christmas, welcoming Elena and Sophia into the fold with genuine warmth. "Thank you for today," Elena said as Thomas drove them home through quiet streets. "Your family is wonderful, and they made us feel so welcome, so accepted. I was terrified they'd hate us. They love you. How could they not? You're remarkable, Elena. You and Sophia both." Thomas reached over, taking her hand. "I meant what I said earlier. I love you, and I want to build a life with you, a real life, not separate existences that occasionally overlap. I want to wake up next to you. I want to help Sophia with her homework. I want us to be a family, officially and completely." Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you and Sophia would consider moving into the mansion with me. Not as my cleaning service, not as visitors, but as family, as home." Thomas paused, then plunged ahead. "And eventually, when the time is right, I'm asking if you'd consider marrying me, making this permanent, making us permanent." "Thomas, we've only known each other a month." 23 days, Thomas corrected. 23 days since you walked into my office with your daughter and reminded me what it meant to be alive. 23 days since thunder became applause instead of something to fear. I know it's fast, Elena, but when you've spent 4 years in darkness, you recognize light when you finally see it. You're my light, both of you. Elena wiped tears from her cheeks. "Sophia and I need to talk about it. This affects her too, and I won't make decisions without her input. But Thomas, I want to say yes. I want it so badly it terrifies me." "Then let's be terrified together," Thomas said, echoing his words from their first real conversation. "One day at a time, one step at a time, but together." They reached Elena's house, and Thomas carried Sophia inside, laying her gently in her bed, still in her dress, not wanting to wake her. Elena covered her daughter, kissing her forehead, and Thomas did the same, the gesture feeling natural and right. Downstairs, they stood in the entryway, neither ready for the night to end, despite the late hour. "Stay," Elena said suddenly. "Not in my bed. That's moving too fast. But stay on the couch. Stay so that when Sophia wakes up tomorrow, we can all have breakfast together. Stay so we can start practicing what being a family feels like." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I'm terrified, but I'm sure." Thomas stayed. He borrowed clothes to sleep in, settled on Elena's worn but comfortable couch, and fell asleep, listening to the sounds of the small house settling around him. It was a far cry from his mansion's silent perfection, but it felt more like home than anywhere had in years. He woke to the smell of coffee and pancakes and the sound of Sophia's delighted laughter. Padding into the kitchen in his borrowed sweatpants, Thomas found Elena at the stove, while Sophia sat at the small table, coloring. "Thomas, you're still here!" Sophia jumped up, running to hug him. "Mama said you stayed over. Does this mean we're having a sleepover?" "Something like that," Thomas said, meeting Elena's eyes over Sophia's head. "Sophia, baby, Thomas and I need to talk to you about something important," Elena said, turning off the stove and coming to join them at the table. "Come sit." Sophia climbed into her chair, her expression turning serious. "Is something wrong?" "No, sweetheart, nothing's wrong. Actually, something might be very right, but we need your opinion." Elena took a deep breath. "How would you feel if Thomas became part of our family? If we all lived together?" Sophia's eyes went enormous. "Like for real? In his big castle house?" "If you wanted to," Thomas said gently. "Your mama and I care about each other very much, and I care about you very much. I'd like us to be a real family, not just friends, but only if you're comfortable with that." Sophia bit her lip, thinking hard. "Would you be like my dad?" The question hit Thomas square in the chest. "I'd like to be, if you wanted me to be. I know I can't replace your biological father, and I wouldn't try to, but I could be a dad to you, if you'd let me." I could help with homework and read bedtime stories and teach you to ride a bike and all the things dads do. Would you leave? Sophia asked, her voice small. If I'm bad, or if we're too much trouble, would you go away like Daddy did? Thomas moved from his chair to kneel beside Sophia, taking her small hands in his larger ones. Sophia, listen to me very carefully. I'm not going anywhere, not when you're bad, though I don't think you could be truly bad if you tried. Not when things are hard. Not when money is tight, or when you're sick, or when you have nightmares, or when you accidentally break things. I'm staying, that's what family means. It means showing up every single day, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Promise? Sophia's voice wavered. I promise. Cross my heart. Thomas made an X over his heart with his finger. And if I ever do anything that makes you feel like I'm not keeping that promise, you can tell me, and we'll talk about it. Because families communicate. They work through problems together instead of running away from them. Sophia looked at her mother. What do you think, Mama? Do you want to live with Thomas? I do, baby, very much. But only if you're okay with it. This is your decision too. Sophia looked between the two adults, her young face thoughtful and serious. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her features. Can I really have a princess tower, with windows all around and a telescope? Thomas laughed, relief flooding through him. You can have whatever you want in your princess tower. We'll design it together. Then yes. Sophia launched herself at Thomas, wrapping her arms around his neck. Yes, yes, yes. I want to be a family. I want you to be my dad. Over Sophia's shoulder, Thomas met Elena's eyes, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. Elena joined the hug, the three of them wrapped together in the small kitchen, and Thomas felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Wholeness. Not the same wholeness he'd had with Rebecca, that was its own unique and precious thing, but a new wholeness, a different kind of complete. I love you both so much, Thomas whispered. Thank you for giving me a reason to live again. We love you too, Elena said, kissing his cheek. Welcome to our family, Thomas. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Elena gave notice on her rental house. Thomas hired movers and decorators, transforming the mansion from a cold museum into a warm home. Rebecca's things were carefully packed and stored, not discarded, but given their proper place as honored memories rather than shrines. New furniture arrived, chosen by all three of them together. Sophia's princess tower took shape, with help from Emma's husband, who turned out to be skilled at carpentry. Thomas officially adopted Sophia on a grey December morning, standing before a judge and promising to love and protect her as his own. Sophia, in her best dress, had cried when the judge declared it official. I have a daddy now, she'd whispered to her mother. A real daddy who stays. The mansion was never quiet anymore. Sophia's laughter echoed through the halls. Elena's presence filled every room with life and warmth. They had family dinners around the enormous dining table that had sat empty for years. They watched old black and white movies, cuddled together on the couch. They created new traditions, new memories, new reasons to smile. On Christmas morning, with snow falling softly outside and a fire crackling in the fireplace, Thomas gave Elena a ring. Not in the fancy restaurant with musicians and champagne that he'd once imagined, but here, in their home, with Sophia bouncing excitedly beside them, with the smell of cinnamon rolls baking and wrapping paper scattered across the floor. Elena Castellanos, you walked into my life with your daughter and reminded me what it meant to hope, to love, to live. You didn't let me hide in my grief. You challenged me to be better, to feel more, to open my heart even when I was terrified. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife, of making our family official, of promising to face all of life's thunderstorms together, knowing we can turn them into applause? Elena was crying, nodding before he'd even finished the question. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Sophia cheered as Thomas slipped the ring on Elena's finger, then pulled them both into a hug. We're getting married. We're really, truly, officially a family. We already were, Thomas said, kissing the top of Sophia's head, then Elena's lips. This is just making it official on paper. In every way that matters, we've been a family since the moment you both walked into my office and changed my life forever. Later that night, After Sophia had finally gone to bed exhausted from excitement, Thomas and Elena stood in what had once been his lonely office. Sophia's drawing still hung on the wall, the one showing 3 figures holding hands under a smiling sun with cheerful lightning. "She drew this before she even really knew you," Elena marveled. "Before any of this was real. It's like she knew somehow that we'd end up here." "Maybe she did," Thomas said, pulling Elena close. "Or maybe she just believed in the possibility of good things happening, of thunderstorms ending and sun coming out, of lightning that makes you smile instead of making you scared." "Thunder is applause," Elena whispered, echoing Sophia's wisdom. "Thunder is applause," Thomas agreed. "And right now, I think the entire universe is applauding us." Outside, actual thunder rumbled in the distance, the last remnant of the winter storm passing through. But inside their home, their real home, filled with love and laughter and life, it sounded exactly like what it was: celebration. Thomas looked at the woman in his arms, thought about the child sleeping peacefully in her princess tower, and felt gratitude wash over him. Gratitude for second chances, for brave choices, for broken crystal awards and power outages, and small moments of courage that led to this. A life rebuilt, a heart reopened, a family created from hope and love, and the willingness to try again. Rebecca would be proud, he thought. She would love Elena and Sophia. She would celebrate this new chapter, this proof that love doesn't end with loss. It just transforms, grows, finds new ways to flourish. And as Thomas held his future wife in the home they'd created together, with thunder applauding outside and their daughter sleeping safely upstairs, he finally understood what it meant to truly live again. Not to forget the past, but to honor it by embracing the future. Not to replace what was lost, but to build something new and beautiful alongside those cherished memories. Life, Thomas had learned, was not about avoiding pain or protecting yourself from loss. It was about having the courage to love anyway, to hope anyway, to believe in second chances and new beginnings. It was about turning thunder into applause. And as Elena lifted her face to kiss him, as Christmas lights twinkled around them and snow fell softly outside, Thomas sent a silent thank you into the universe. To Rebecca, for teaching him to love. To Elena, for teaching him to love again. To Sophia, for reminding him that broken things could be beautiful. And to whatever force had brought them all together in a perfect storm of timing and chance and fate. He was home, they were home, and they were, finally and completely, whole. But 2 years later, Thomas stood in the hospital room, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink. Sophia pressed close to his side, peering at her new baby sister with wonder and delight. "She's so small," Sophia whispered, now 9 years old, and somehow both grown up and still his little girl. "Can I hold her?" "Sit down first," Elena instructed from the hospital bed, tired but radiant, "and be very careful with her head." Thomas carefully transferred the baby to Sophia's arms, watching his daughter, because Sophia was his daughter in every way that mattered, cradle her baby sister with infinite gentleness. "Hi, Hannah," Sophia cooed. "I'm your big sister, and this is our dad, and that's our mom, and we're a family, a real family. And I promise I'll teach you all the important stuff, like how thunder is just the sky clapping, and how lightning can smile, and how dads who stay are worth more than all the treasure in the world." Thomas felt Elena's hand slip into his, squeezing gently. They stood together, watching their daughters, and Thomas marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From that stormy night in his office to this moment of perfect peace, from 2 broken people to a family of 4. From surviving to truly living. "What are you thinking?" Elena asked softly. Thomas smiled, kissing his wife's forehead. "I'm thinking that if someone had told me 4 years ago that my life would look like this, filled with love and laughter, and 2 incredible daughters and a wife who challenges me every day to be better, I wouldn't have believed them. I would have said I didn't deserve it, And now I know that it's not about deserving. It's about being brave enough to accept grace when it's offered, being brave enough to love again, even when you're terrified, being brave enough to believe in second chances. He looked at his family, his beautiful, chaotic, perfect family. Thank you for being brave with me. Always, Elena promised. Through every storm, every challenge, every moment of doubt, we're brave together. Outside, thunder rumbled softly in the distance, and Thomas couldn't help but smile. Somewhere, somehow, the universe was applauding, and this time, he was applauding right back. And so we reach the end of another unforgettable journey. If this story touched your heart, stirred your emotions, or simply made you feel something, you can help me in 3 simple ways. Leave your like. It's quick, free, and shows me I'm on the right path. Subscribe and turn on the bell to never miss our upcoming stories. Comment below what moment struck you the most in this story. Every like, every subscription, every comment motivates me to bring you more engaging, emotional stories full of twists and turns. And if you know someone who would love this story, share it. Sometimes a good narrative is exactly what someone needs for their day. Thank you for being here with me. See you in the next story.